difference makers in the world. Now, here is your host, John Crump.
It is Wednesday, which is Hump Day, so all you guys with camels out there, I hope you're having a great day. If you don't know who I am, my name is John Crump. I am the director for Gun Owners of America for the wonderful state of Virginia. I am also a writer for Ammoland.com. You can go check me out over at Ammoland.com. I do this YouTube show and I do a bunch of other 2A stuff as well. Just as a little side note, we did file a suit against Northrum in his one handgun a month law, and there might be other lawsuits coming down. I see John Voorhees out here. This is the third episode on my battle for the Republican nomination for the Senate seat in Virginia, because I think no matter who wins the Republican nomination, they're going to kick Warner's ass. I blanked out there for a minute. Just to remind everyone out there, I have a GoFundMe link in the link of all my descriptions, no matter where, besides Periscope, because they don't let you put descriptions in. And also, we have these. If you become a Patreon at the $5 level, you can get a patch. And all my Patreon money goes to help a little girl with cancer. Her name is Bella, and she is my niece. She has a really aggressive form of brain cancer. It's inoperable, and we're trying to make her comfortable. But the medical bills are just insane. So you can do the Patreon, set up a monthly donation. That'd be awesome. And even when that situation is over, it will be going to 2A stuff. Or you can also do a paypal.me/JohnCC. You can super chat me, or you can just give to the GoFundMe. Whatever you want to do is fine. Like I said, this is the last episode on my candidate for the Senate seat. And, yep, I had Daniel Gade. I had Thomas Speciale. And now I have, sorry.
That's okay.
Alissa Baldwin, who is also in the Republican primary. So how are you doing tonight, Alissa?
I'm doing well. Just had a tickle in my throat right as we were going live. I'm doing great. And yourself, John?
I'm doing all right. Hanging in there.
I'm sorry to hear about your niece, Bella. That's a terrible diagnosis for anyone to receive, but especially someone so young.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Came down with a really, really bad headache. And, it's just that. It's not a really good prognosis because she has an aggressive cancer, and then she has the aggressive form of the aggressive cancer. Which, it's not good. But we're doing everything possible to make her as comfortable as possible, and everything with the medical bills is just insane.
Even with your family will love on her and will be in prayer for her as well. I know I'm a strong woman of faith, and God's still in the miracle business. My aunt several years ago had a terminal diagnosis of brain cancer, and she's still here with us today, blessedly. So anything is possible. But I know you'll want to treasure the time with your family, and we'll help out with those medical bills. That's what we should do, is help our fellow man.
Yeah, it's 99% of the kids don't make it to 9 months.
That's just awful.
And over 5 years, it's not good. But let's get into you here. You are running in the Republican candidate for senator. You are going up against Daniel Gade and Thomas Speciale. Before I get into what your stances are in policy and everything, I asked those two guys the same question. I'm going to ask you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Okay. So I think that's important for voters to know. Good question to start. My name is Alissa Baldwin. I am a native Virginian. I'm the only native Virginian in the Republican primary. And I am a civics teacher. So I am definitely not a politician. I am a civics teacher, someone who champions our Constitution. I know those principles. I teach those principles and what makes our Constitution of then great, even today, all these years later, with the next generation of citizen leaders. And they were, in fact, very influential and encouraging of me to get in the race, to get in the fight, to live my teaching of those principles and the conservative values that I hold dear. There's nothing better than having eighth graders throw your words back at you when you have told them over and over that it's very important to be involved in the political processes as a voter, as a candidate when the time is right and the need presents itself. And so when they called me out on it and called my bluff, I did step up and rise to the occasion. Certainly not something that I thought I would do as a career path. And for me, it's not a career path. It is an opportunity to serve and to serve my fellow Virginians and Americans just in a different way than I've done in the past. I've been very involved in education circles, obviously, and different professional and civic organizations as a leader and faith-based groups doing the important work there. But I have been involved in the political scene as a grassroots activist from the time I was a little girl, helping my dad at the polls and, knocking doors leading up to elections. Served as the executive director and then chair of the College Republicans while I was at University of Richmond studying political science, no less. And I was an overachiever, so I also double majored in leadership studies and then went into the legal profession because the rule of law not only is a fundamental principle, it's something that I have always really held in high regard. And so worked as a paralegal for 4.5 years, I think it was, and then felt called to do something different and became a career switcher and got a job as a high school history teacher and loved working with students and making a difference in that way. Went on to get my master's degree from Longwood University in school administration and added that on to my teaching license. And most recently have been teaching in the middle school classroom, again, those civics principles. And I've taken them on the campaign trail with me since last year when I announced that I'd be seeking the Republican nomination, because it's good for all citizens to have a little refresher course in how political processes work. And people have been encouraged to have a fresh perspective and someone who's so relatable as, just a regular person. My 3 favorite words in the Constitution, in fact, are "we the people." And that speaks to me, and that speaks to a lot of Virginia voters right now.
All right. There is something going on with our chats that YouTube is spamming all the chats and the chats from the other areas. I found, besides like a couple Facebook ones got through. But some of the other areas that we broadcast to is not coming through, but YouTube is coming through like 10 times. So I have no idea. So I'm going to keep on trying to flip back and forth. If I miss someone's question, I'm sorry. Just want to preface that. Okay. One question I have. Why did you decide that you're going to throw your hat in the ring and take on these politicians and run for Senate?
Well, and again, that's a great question because I did plunge myself into the deep end of the political pool without hesitation because I was sick and tired of career politicians and the radical leftist agenda. I was also tired of the to get along establishment elite doing nothing really to push back on behalf of my native Commonwealth. So I decided to do something about it rather than complain and just hope for the best and hope that change would occur. And I knew that really did mean living my own teaching as a civics teacher. So I considered what role would be the best use of my knowledge, skills, and dispositions. And given my kind of common man expertise of the Constitution and utter disgust with Mark Warner's failed policies, running for U.S. Senate in 2020 became the clear choice as a way to disrupt politics as usual on behalf of we the people.
Yeah, since you taught like social studies, like civics and history and stuff like that, maybe you should give Tim Kaine a lesson.
I saw that yesterday, and I know he knows better. He's just leaning left, pandering, exactly.
Yeah. One thing I don't want out of any candidate is pandering to either side, actually.
That's right. We should be who we are and own it.
Exactly. Exactly. I want to hit you with a gun question really quick. Just because we do mostly gun stuff. I mean, I work for Ammo and News, and I work for GOA. So let's go. Let's go and ask you a gun question. There has been a lot of backlash about universal background checks. I want to get your stance on universal background checks. So I'm going to get into some other stuff and then come back to the gun stuff.
So, I think that a lot of people are advocating for universal background checks because they don't understand the existing procedural safeguards that are already in place. And I am someone who is unequivocal in my support of the Second Amendment because it's not actually a right given to us by the Second Amendment. It's a God-given natural right that is protected by the Second Amendment, by 2A. And so I always thought shall not infringe was very straightforward, very self-evident as a truth, meaning no compromise. And it saddens me, it pains me to see that we've become this society where we'll give a little here and compromise there. And at the end of the day, we're losing our liberty, losing our freedom, and having to play this game of mother may I, asking for our rights back, treating them more like permissions. And that's not how it's supposed to be, not at all. So I don't support the universal background checks because I see it as an infringement.
That is a very good answer. Another question I have for you is there is a lot of talk in Congress where Republicans say they're going to support stuff. For one thing, when the Republicans had the House and the Senate, the deregulation of suppressors, the Hearing Protection Act, for example, they said they were going to pass that, and they let that die. They said, we'll come back to that, and they never did until it was impossible. Will you, and just not with gun stuff, but will you stand up and say, I will work to keep my promises?
Absolutely. I am known with people in a variety of backgrounds as a woman of her word. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And if I say I won't, I don't. I've never been one that will waver or compromise on fundamental principles. And I think it's important that you can have conversations with people who think differently than you. And sometimes that can bring about really creative and better solutions. But at the end of the day, you have to know who you are and what you stand for. And I've made very clear choices with a lot of political issues, and I'm not going to go along to get along, and I won't back down from things that really matter.
What makes you think that you can beat your two opponents in the primary?
So at this point, it's really just presenting the voters of Virginia an option because we all agree at the end of the day that anybody is better than Mark Warner. I've said since day one, ABW, anybody but Warner. And I also like to add that those are my initials. Alissa Baldwin wins Virginia again. So a little, shout out to the clever marketing trick there. But it's really, I don't see them as competition. I see them as choices for voters to consider. And I encourage voters of Virginia to do their homework, know what each of us stands for and how we're different. Because at the end of the day, one of us will be the Republican nominee. At the end of the day, one of us will guide the team of citizens here in the Commonwealth to take back Virginia for conservative values and to retire Mark Warner from the Senate because he has forgotten his obligation, his oath to put the constituents first and instead bought into the swamp and the DNC as a puppet and his special interest. So, I don't see them as competition, and I have run a very positive campaign, never disparaging either of them, and I'm not going to start in the final days leading up to it either. And if folks want to do their homework, I think they'll realize I'm strong on the issues, and I'm also the kind of candidate that can beat Mark Warner because I am everything that he is not. I'm right on policy, I'm right on people, and I'm right on the Constitution, and that's what we need when we're talking about changing politics as usual.
All right, I got a couple questions here. What is your stance on the National Firearms Act?
The National Firearms Act, I have said there are big old chunks that absolutely need to go and go quickly as possible, like hot coals or hot potatoes in your hand. And I see it as an infringement. There are things there that I was shocked the NRA didn't push back against. They were very silent when they needed to be vocal in defense of our rights to keep and bear arms, because those protect all of our other rights.
Do you think that the National Firearms Act is unconstitutional? I think I know what the answer is, but
yes, I wouldn't even say unconstitutional so much as I would say anti-constitutional. Again, shall not infringe means no compromise. And as the next U.S. Senator from Virginia, I will take a very active leadership role in not only protecting our rights, but working to restore the rights that have been robbed from us with past federal legislation.
all right, how about this one? I got another question for you, gun-related question. I said I was going to get into the gun stuff later, but I
Right in.
Yeah. We already got her stance on the Hughes Amendment. We don't have our stance on the Hughes Amendment, but I'm pretty sure it's an infringement.
That's right. You know, we got to walk it back. There's no need for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk going on about red flag laws, and a lot of people on both sides think that they're a good idea. I definitely think they violate several different amendments, but I'm not here to give my opinion on it. Tell me, I know that you told me in the past that you don't support red flag laws, but I want to hear what your issues with red flag laws are.
Sure. So I have always said that I call flag on the play when it comes to red flag laws, because there is a clear violation there of the Second Amendment, of our Fourth Amendment, which is, no unreasonable search and seizure, our Fifth Amendment right to due process, and even the 14th Amendment with due process as well. And the fact remains that with red flag laws, anyone can say anything, make that claim in secret with the court. They can then enter your premises, putting you and your family at risk of reacting, because your inclination, your instinct is going to be to protect yourself and your property, and putting everybody in harm's way, including law enforcement that are executing those warrants. And so red flag laws are a bad way to go. It's just too easy for people to make accusations and deprive people of their due process and liberty. And what a lot of people don't recognize is even after, let's say, it advances through the court of law and you win and prove that you're of sound mind and all that, you don't get your property back. You don't get your guns back. And so now, the government has seized unlawfully your possessions as well.
Okay. That is a good answer, and I totally agree with it. That's my stance on it. Another issue that's really big in gun owners' minds is two issues: constitutional carry and national reciprocity. Let's start with constitutional carry. Actually, let's go with national reciprocity. Do you agree that we need a national reciprocity?
I am generally speaking, I'm a big advocate of states' rights and want to see the federal government role as very limited. That's part of what being a Republican means at the end of the day. But I think that national reciprocity could help to make sure that as we're going about our business as law-abiding citizens who are also responsible gun owners, that it enables us to move about more freely. But that really does lead to the constitutional carry question. Do you want to jump into that?
Yeah, that's why I was wondering which way to go with it. That's why
that's my preference. I actually carry a copy of the Constitution itself, the physical document, the language, in my purse at all times. So I get a lot of flack for exhibiting constitutional carry. But in terms of gun ownership, I think it shouldn't matter whether it's open or concealed. You have that right to defend yourself, and particularly as a female gun owner, depending on what I'm wearing, some options can be very limiting for concealed carry or versus open carry. So I fully support constitutional carry and don't think that you should have to pay a permit to have your right back.
You brought up about being a female and carrying a firearm, Alissa. This is going into another state, here in Colorado, where a woman was raped, and she was testifying that she's now a gun owner, and she wished she was on campus and she was raped on campus, and she wished that she was able to carry her firearm on campus because that could have stopped her rape. And one of the male, by the way, um, representative said, I hate to tell you this, but he would probably take that gun away from you, and that would have made the situation a lot worse. Uh, if you were talking to that representative, what would you tell him? I know it's kind of like a local question.
Right. No, I strongly disagree. I think, gun rights are women's rights, gun rights are men's rights, gun rights are human rights. And the ability to defend yourself with a firearm is the great equalizer. It's really not just about self-defense, although that's certainly a priority and area of focus for me and for a growing number of people in our country right now, given the state of current affairs. But to say or to suggest that someone would be able to overpower you and take that gun away from you is not at all true. Guns can be quite the deterrent for those who would mean you harm.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I was just blown away when I saw that video. Let's get into a little bit of COVID-19. A lot of the country has been locked down due to COVID-19, and a lot of the country is still on some type of form of lockdown or social distancing and stuff like that. Restaurants are only allowed to be open at 50% capacity. You're in Northern Virginia, so yeah, you probably experienced some of the stuff that I have. Come I'm in Northern Virginia as well. I'm over in Ashburn, not too far away from you.
Actually, in Southern Virginia, but I know the Ashburn area up in Loudon. So,
for some reason, I thought you were in Northern Virginia.
I was born in Northern Virginia, so I do have lots of family and friends up still in that area.
That's what I read. I'm sorry about
that. No, that's okay. We're all Virginians, and yes, the shutdown effects have really crossed the Commonwealth, and then the Northern Virginia, I think, is being unfairly targeted and kind of held even further behind the rest of the Commonwealth. And even then, it strikes me as hypocrisy and ironic that when the elected representatives, Republicans for the most part, from Southwest Virginia and Southside Virginia, were advocating a regional reopening post-COVID with the after the peak. The governor was not about it. And it was only when Northern Virginia and Richmond wanted to have special treatment that the governor was suddenly receptive to doing it regionally and by district and that sort of thing. The whole process, though, has certainly been unprecedented and historic for my lifetime, and tragic, because the executive branch here in Virginia was placed in a position of choosing winners and losers. And every job that people do is essential. The work that you do that feeds your family, that pays your bills, is important. It matters to you, it matters to me, and it should matter to our elected officials as well. And we didn't see that. We didn't see a measured response. We saw a politicizing of a healthcare crisis to advance their agenda, to lock us up, to scare us, and to put everything in a tizzy and in a panic. And it's going to take, I think personally, re-electing Trump to continue the recovery with our economics. But the sooner we can all reopen, the better. And quite frankly, if they're not moving fast enough, we need to exercise our rights as free citizens, as free people, and be responsible and exercise some civil disobedience and get the job done for ourselves, because small businesses in particular are really suffering right now. They're the backbone of the American economy, and they've got to be open. Too many have already shuttered their doors forever, and that's a shame.
Yeah, it is. A lot of companies aren't coming back from this, which somehow I believe that's part of the plan. I know the original plan was just to slow it down a little bit so the medical field can get a little bit ahead of it. And then they got ahead of it, and then the goalposts shifted to, oh, we can't reopen until it's gone.
Right, until it's eradicated, right? And life is not without risk. That's not how life works. If you're doing anything, there are risks involved, risk factors involved. It's unrealistic to say that you have to stay at home forever until the governor decides that it's safe for you to come out. And so that whole idea is ludicrous. But you brought up an interesting thing that I want to comment on. That was a very subtle way of compromising, right? We allowed the government to say, stay at home, stem the tide. And we have this whole new vocabulary now, slow the spread, social distancing. We allowed ourselves to be put in that position as citizens, as a state, as a nation. And we probably should have been from the get-go a little more hesitant, a little more resistant.
Did I lose Alissa, or is it me? If you guys can see me, let me know. Hello. All right, I think we might have lost Alissa. Let me see if I'm still alive here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We lost Alissa. Hopefully, she will be back. All right. She is not here right now. She dropped out. I'm not really sure what the dealio is, but I'm sure she will be back shortly here. While she is gone, I can tell you a little bit about some of the stuff that I have going on and some of the stories I have. Arms List won their case against the Brady's campaign for gun safety, the confiscation people. They took Brady's best shot and won in Massachusetts. This is the 6th time they've been sued. Brady refiled with the same thing that they lost on all the other times, again in Wisconsin. And yeah, and here. We lost you there.
Yikes. Sorry about that. We're having some storm
activity.
Here, and it must have got the Wi-Fi for a moment. So
Yeah.
Where was I when we lost the broadcast signal?
You're talking about COVID and giving up power to the government.
Yes.
Anytime you give power to, usually keep it.
Yeah. So it was kind of that voluntary surrender of our liberty, and maybe I think now we're a little more aware that might be the plan to slippery slope and nice, slow, steady, come at it from public health and public safety, and then take away our rights little by little. So we've got to be a little more vigilant, I think.
All right. A couple other gun questions and one that's not a gun question. Well, let's go with the not a gun question now.
Not the gun question.
I want to know your opinion on no-knock raids.
They're bad. They're a bad idea. They put law enforcement at risk, as well as individuals in the home, because they're just showing up unannounced. I think it's a safety and a security risk, in particular for our men and women who put on the uniform and bravely protect and serve the community.
Yeah, that's a great. Another question. The Supreme Court recently decided not to take any of the 10 gun cases that were in front of them. Obviously, they're scared of taking gun cases ever since Heller. Why do you think that they're so afraid of taking a Second Amendment case?
I don't know, because the very constitutionality of it is plain for them to see the need and to know that it is a pressing priority for them to address. And it's quite frankly shameful that they're not hearing the redress of grievances from folks who've carried the legislation through litigation to that point. And they absolutely should start hearing some of those gun cases so we can get our rights restored.
Okay, someone on the other channels is hitting me up, and they want to know what your opinion on the Convention of States.
COS. So I'm on their mailing list. I like to stay informed and get information from them. I've been to 2 of their meetings, I think, maybe in the last couple of years. I mentioned I am a big states' rights supporter because, again, less federal government in our lives is usually better for us as people. In terms of the Convention of States, all of the amendments that we have now, the 27 existing ones, were passed through the other process, not through a convention of the states. It was, Congress, and then the states ratified later. So it's interesting. I think some things it would probably take the states coming together to make happen. For example, term limits, because the people in the halls of power in DC are never going to voluntarily surrender that power. They want to be there forever and ever, amen, as career politicians, unfortunately. So the Convention of States has been very vocal for that in particular. But we need some parameters, some safeguards, so that we don't have a runaway train either. Because depending on how states are represented there, it could get pretty crazy and complicated as well, just like Congress.
Yeah. Last day, besides New York Rifle Pistol Association versus New York City, which was thrown out as moot, was Heller. McDonald came before Heller. I'm going to share my screen right here because we also have another question about a bill, HR 5717. I know you're going for a Senate seat, but HR 5717 is a very bad bill. I don't think it has any chance of hell of passing. Anyone who says it does is fear mongering. That basically is, it's called the Gun Violence Prevention and Community Safety Act of 2020, which is basically an assault weapons ban. A couple people asked, John Voorhees is one of them, but a couple other people have asked what your opinion on it is. I know what it is.
I would say it might be a little predictable here because I am such a staunch advocate of our right to keep and bear arms and fight against tyranny. I'm a Glock gal myself, so I speak from a position of being a gun owner. So I'm right there. I'm rightly concerned about this issue. It's personal, not just political. It's bad legislation. Just in the highlights of it, they want a registry, they want to limit, and a lot of that comes from a position of fear. I absolutely think, and not just because I'm an educator, but I absolutely think that if we educate our friends who have concerns on the other side of the gun control argument, that they won't be so scared, just because something looks intimidating to you because you're not well versed in how, it works and the safety procedures that are, the safety mechanisms that are there, doesn't make it an assault weapon. We don't have that. That's just liberal language for something that they don't understand and something they're scared of. And we can't let fear be a factor, and we certainly can't legislate from that emotional response either. It's no good.
Okay. I want to throw out there, I've been plugging my Patreon and super chats now for a good while. I didn't really plug them either one until my niece got sick. But so I'm starting those up, and everything goes to her. Also, the GoFundMe. So I have 4 passes to give away. They're like download codes that you can download and watch the movie Sniper, Assassin's End, that just came out yesterday for streaming. So the next 4 people will either give a super chat, join the Patreon, or give give to the GoFundMe. We'll get one of those 4 passes for the free rental of Sniper Assassins, and that just came out yesterday, and that's courtesy of Sony. Yes, Sony is a sponsor of me. I don't know why, especially if they actually watch my content. I'm pretty sure they probably wouldn't be a sponsor of me.
What they don't know won't hurt them. It's good to have sponsors in your corner.
Exactly. So there you go. So anyone from there, I know most of my people watch me on other platforms from YouTube, so that's why I said it's not open just to super chats. Yeah. All right.
Y'all hear that, right? Get on it. Yeah. Movie night.
Yeah. It's a good movie. Yeah. So Raw 6613, also known as Bob. He wants to know if you've heard of Maj Toure in the group Black Guns Matter.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of hanging out with Maj Toure, and he called me Becky, which isn't my name at all, but we were in good company and being very jovial with one another, and we had great conversations about how to partner in the gun movement, gun rights movement, with people who don't look like you. And so great conversation with him. I enjoyed that very much. And he's speaking some truth to power as well.
Yeah, Maj is heading down to Texas tomorrow morning. He's flying out. He's a friend. He's on my podcast a lot. In fact, one of his
Tell him to follow me on Twitter.
I can. One of his cohorts, like one of the people that's going down to Texas with him to help out with their Black Guns Matter event down there, is he had to come over today because he didn't have a TSA approved case. So he was like, man, I got to jump on an airplane. I don't have a TSA approved case. Do you got one? I was like, yeah, man, come on over.
Well, then if he lived in Virginia, he'd be a great supporter. Because I think those kinds of agencies don't need to exist anyways.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question. I am all for defunding the ATF. What do you say to that?
Amen. Here. Let's do it.
Will you work to defund the ATF?
Yeah. So I took a survey probably a month or two ago with the Virginia Constitutional Conservatives. And when it got time to, what agencies, what departments are you willing to work to get rid of at the federal government level, I kind of went a little crazy, but I was serious because these things are, these places, these groups are not constitutionally provisioned. And the more we sacrifice and surrender power and authority to them, the more likely to infringe on our rights. And big government is not good for people.
Exactly. I definitely agree. The ATF don't like me too much. I leak all their documents.
Fair enough.
And I use my media as I'm not telling you who my
good to have some credentials.
Yeah, like I don't have to do crap. One of the things that just leaked out of the ATF is the ATF wants to reclassify pistol braces as stocks to prevent people from putting them on their pistol ARs. I take it you would be against that as well.
That's right. No go for me. People should be allowed to customize their firearms the way that they see fit, and practice responsibly. So no infringements.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. There's been a lot of really bad stuff going on in the country, a lot of division and everything else, and it all kicked off with George Floyd's death. I looked at that, and to me, that's open and shut. That's not that was not kosher what happened there. But it kicked off, and I think both sides agreed on that. And it kicked off a bunch of stuff where there's peaceful protest, and I'm all for the peaceful protest. I mean, protest to your heart's content, but there's also a lot of looting and rioting. And a lot of outside groups are coming in and looting and rioting. A lot of the Antifa members and stuff like that. I'm on their hit list, by the way. Just to let you know. So,
well, if you've got enemies, it means you stood for something. So I guess there's that to your credit.
I leaked a bunch of their internal communications that they didn't like.
Well, of course they don't want their game plan exposed. I mean, they're anarchists, and they breed and thrive on discontent and civil unrest. And what happened with George Floyd is awful. It's terrible. It's tragic. And whether there were racist intentions there or not, the fact remains that was an incompetent officer who absolutely needs to be held accountable. And so, as do the others that were involved in that situation. And the nation was willing to come together and address that bad police exist, just like there are bad teachers and there are bad doctors and there are bad lawyers. And, every profession has bad actors, bad apples. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, like the old expression goes. Our law enforcement do a tough enough job as it is. And to now go from peaceful protests to the agitators stirring things up even more. And of course, we know it's because it's an election year, right? We understand that if we're rational beings and know a thing or two about politics and how it all plays out. So they're looting, they're rioting, they're destroying property. They've killed others in the weak sense. And where's the justice for them? Where's the outcry for those lives that have been lost? And the senseless violence that's going on. America is a nation of law and order, and we've temporarily kind of lost our way in that respect. And then it's just kind of been a slippery slope, a downhill spiral with attacks on monuments, and then attacks on businesses of certain ownership and neighborhoods, and now today's syrup and rice. So where's it all going to end? There's civil rights and peaceful protest, and then there's just insanity of criminal behavior, quite frankly, with the rioters and the looters in particular.
I mean, they're trying to get Chase removed off Paw Patrol.
Right. I mean, it's a cartoon.
It's a positive message cartoon, which is
well, and it struck me. I think I actually commented somewhere on social media last night or early this morning. I was up till like 5:30. I don't even know, but I commented that when it comes to the law enforcement piece in particular, they're crying out that we want more transparency and more accountability, and then the very shows like Live PD where you see the action in real time as it's going down from professional videographers, those are the shows they're removing, and instead we're going to rely on amateur hour coverage that people capture with their cell phones. So it's the exact opposite of what they want. And when they rant and scream about defunding the police, well, that's going to make it tougher for them to do their jobs. Trust me, I'm a teacher. Anytime our funding in public schools gets cut, we have to do more with less. And it doesn't make things better for the people that you're supposed to serve.
Yeah, that is true. That is definitely true. I was going to ask you about defunding the police, but you kind of touched on it there.
I beat you to the punch. Sorry.
Yeah, John, he was asking if I saw the Albuquerque video. The only thing I'm going to say about the Albuquerque video is I did see the video, but I also saw some unreleased video that is not out yet, and I would hold judgment on that until you see the unreleased video. So I'm not going to ask anyone to comment on that because the whole story isn't out there yet, and I think a lot of people's opinions on the guy that shot in self-defense is going to change a little bit when the full video comes out.
And I think that's important for us to recognize. We need to push pause. There are life or death situations. There are fast acting situations that civilians and law enforcement alike are going through, that they're experiencing, they're managing, and to make those quick, rash rushes to judgment after the fact we need to make sure that we've got all the facts, we have all the evidence. That's why people are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But that's also why we should reserve judgment until we know everything as well. Because for the most part, we weren't there. We weren't the ones as firsthand observers or witnesses. So.
Yeah, the Atlanta officer who shot the guy behind the Wendy's was just charged with murder. I wanted to get your opinion on that charge of murder, looking at what we know.
Well, again, I'm still kind of reserving judgment. I've been a little distracted with the last minute get out the vote efforts, so I haven't dug into that too terribly much. But I do understand the basics of the situation, and that there was some defiance, a lack of compliance, and then taser pulled out back on the officer, and who reacted with lethal force. So again, I think it's a tragic situation, but I don't think that that's a proper response when he truly was probably in fear for his safety and life as well. And at that point, he'd already lost his taser to the suspect, so he was limited in his options to respond.
Yeah, if my thing is, let's say that he was hit by the taser and incapacitated. There's no way he could have known if the guy was going to take his gun and shoot him.
Right, because in that moment, in that situation, you've already proven that you're not behaving calmly and rationally. So where would you stop? We don't know. So I think that's a shame that the officer has now become kind of the scapegoat of backlash as well.
How would you stop or actually start the conversation about what's going on with everyone?
Well,
it seems like I think people aren't listening to each other.
Right. And I think, unfortunately, the mainstream media has a lot to do with that, because they give their sound bites, they give their sensationalized headlines, and people fall for it. People don't do their homework. They don't take time to, investigate further, to get the full set of facts. They take what someone said or they overheard and they run with it, and then have very emotional responses to it. And we've got to stop that. We can't let the media control us and our actions. We're responsible for our behaviors. We're responsible for our choices. Personal accountability and responsibility seem to go by the wayside, which is terrible. And I think we have to have those conversations, and tough issues require tough conversations and a willingness to listen. And both sides have to do that, because the more we let them play us against each other, the worse the situation is going to get, not better.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's getting worse and worse. It's like 2020. Just if you get elected, can you contact the Men in Black and have them
reset the calendar?
Just so they can be like, 2020 was a wonderful year.
I blame all the people who were standing up their brooms on social media, because that was like flip the switch, and then the insanity ensued. It's been a crazy year all around.
Yeah, the whole broom thing was, it only happens this one day. I was like, okay. For complete transparency, I'm an engineer by trade. So I'm very, very, very well versed in physics. I've taken some really high level physics classes. If I would do it again, I probably would have just got a physics degree. That was my first love, but
that's tough stuff. When I was at U of R, the baby biology course wasn't available, so I ended up having to take physics for majors. That's some tough content area right there.
Yeah. So when I looked at that, being from an engineering background and also my physics background, I looked at that. I was like, no, that works every day.
That's the science.
I can show you the math, why it works every single day. But people are just dumb. I don't know.
Sadly, I've seen something similar with the 2020 on the every day, and it's only going to happen. I'm like, no, if you're using military time in the year 2020 at 8:20 p.m. every day, it's going to say 2020 on the clock. Like, that's just how clocks work. So people can be silly and kind of miss the obvious sometimes.
It's like that one old commercial where the guy was like, well, I've seen it on the internet, so it must be true.
True. That's right.
Some of the people and some of the Facebook groups that we're in could be broadcast to multiple places, also DLive, and also YouTube. I'm seeing it now. So I'll get to it now because I've been asked like 5 times about it. What is your opinion on Chaz in Seattle?
Didn't they haven't they renamed themselves again? They're having an identity crisis out there in Seattle.
Whatever they identify.
Yeah, again, anarchists, right? The irony is not lost on me, though, that they claimed this area for themselves and said this is our space, and you've got to pay to be here as a business owner. We call that kind of taxes, and then put up border walls because, hey, what do you know? They do work to keep people out after all that aren't following the rule of law. And then inside the zone, it's total madness. And people are getting hurt. I've seen some video footage of street preachers and people that are there trying to be helpful, even bringing in water and supplies that are being beat up and fully disrespected. And it's an abomination. Would be the word that I would use. That's probably a nice, polite, but strong objection to what's going on there. But we see that in, unfortunately, very Democrat-controlled areas where they don't want to enforce the rule of law and make sure that we have law and order restored. So it's shameful.
Yeah, it is. I say we build a bigger wall. And I don't know if you saw the old John Carpenter movie, Escape from New York, or the sequel, Escape from LA.
Bad with movies.
Well, basically, they built a wall around New York City and just turned it into a giant prison. Just like left everyone there. Like, all right, well, we're going to throw you in there. You're on your own.
Right.
You're not allowed to leave. But, I think that's what they should do. Just let them rule their little area and see how it turns out with their warlord.
If they look at instances around the world, socialism fails because it kind of it collapses in on itself. And so they, even if they're really believing what they are saying and touting, it's going to fall apart. And we're seeing that early because the whole idea is just so absurd.
Awesome. Let's get into politics a little bit. Who do you see in either the Senate or the House now that you really admire and you would like to be like?
So in the House, I really like Liz Cheney from Wyoming. She is very assertive and very knowledgeable about policies and does a great job representing her constituents and listening to them, and then having that accountability piece with them as well. On the Senate side, I like Rand Paul, who has a very independent streak to him that I like, because at the end of the day, it's about our constitutional principles. And I'm someone who always, I definitely am very loyal and faithful to the Republican Party creed, but it's about people and principles above the partisan politics. And he does a good job of kind of finding that balancing act.
Now, you can't like Liz Cheney. You're a Republican. Republicans aren't supposed to be inclusive.
I like Liz. She's a Republican. Who are you talking about?
I'm being facetious because Ray says, you can't be an openly gay Republican, and it's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah, everybody wants to put people in boxes and assign labels, and it's shameful. I had someone say they couldn't vote for me because I was a woman, and I was like, wow, I hadn't noticed that about myself. Thanks for pointing it out.
Someone actually do that?
Yeah, that's sad, actually.
Did they elaborate on why?
No, they said they loved everything that I said about immigration reform, healthcare, gun control, like fighting back against gun control, gun grabbing, but that they couldn't cast their ballot for a woman. And I was like, well, that's your loss, unfortunately.
All right, looking into your immigration policy.
Yeah.
Since you brought What is your immigration policy, and are you for strong borders?
Yeah. So my favorite president of historical times is Ronald Reagan. I use a lot of Reagan quotes. So he said that a nation without borders is a nation gone under. So we absolutely need to secure the border. President Trump was right in 2016. He's right now that we need to build that physical barrier with the infrastructure support, technology, and personnel. It can't just be as simple as a wall. We say secure the border. And that really is that comprehensive, multiple pronged approach, which is necessary. But we also have to go a step further and accomplish the merit-based immigration reform. It's not enough to say we have a border and everyone can pass through. We need to make sure that those coming here legally even still have America first priorities for themselves and will add value to our country. And follow that rule of law process. The naturalization process is a difficult one in the 14th Amendment, but an important one. And so merit-based immigration, ending chain migration, and then I have also been very passionate and vocal that because Americans should receive priority for jobs in the workforce, that we need to reduce the number of H-1B visas and make sure that our workers are in the employment workforce before any others from other countries and get the training that they need to do those jobs well.
Okay, you brought up H-1B visa, which is actually on my list of questions I was going to ask you about. Would you cut them across the board or for specific industries? Because I know in my industry, for example, which is I do a lot of, I do a lot of government. Well, I do government stuff now, but I've done commercial stuff of like cryptography and engineering, like stuff like that. And right now there is a shortage of people who want to do it. By like for every one applicant, there's 4 jobs. And there's been a lot of outreach trying to get young kids into my field, but it just hasn't worked. Or the field's it's a combination of the field's grown so fast, and it's kind of a tedious. You have to actually like it. You're just not going to
kind of important. Yeah, but although I have a friend who does work and they actually hate their job, but it pays well. And they say, I hate my job when I'm at work, but I love being able to live my life with the money that it affords me in my free time. So there's a trade-off for that friend.
The burnout rate in my field is my field that I was in is tremendously high. So if people don't like it, they can come in and make a lot of money because it does pay really well. But then they will get burned out within like 5 years and say the money is not worth it. So in that type of situation, what's your...
Well, and I think there's a difference there between if there's an actual shortage of applicants and qualified people who are just totally uninterested. Because if we've got people who might be interested, they just currently lack the knowledge or skills, then we need to support those individuals that could be applicants with training programs and that sort of thing, instead of going out of the country to insource sort of the outsourced labor. But if it's truly a shortage, then sure, I'm not saying eliminate it altogether, but we do need to drastically reduce the number.
Yeah. Because I worked for a Silicon Valley company, and they were hiring. They tried a program where they would hire people off the street, entry level, and pay them starting out at like $89,000. Entry level job, like you can go. They said go to Best Buy, find people working at Geek Squad, and offer them this money. So,
wow, we did. That's pretty crazy. Well, and
people burned out and just.
Yeah, because my general concern with the H-1B visas is that we've seen that when the jobs are given to those who come here on those work visas, that it actually drops American wages for Americans who would otherwise be willing to do that work. And so I think that's a consideration we need to bear in mind.
Yeah, a lot of fields it would, and the field that I came from, I don't think it would.
I see that question on the screen from Bob. When I started the campaign, one of the committee members at the unit I was speaking to asked me about the 17th Amendment, and I said I wouldn't be here campaigning if things were different with the 17th Amendment. And here's why I think that was written at the time, and why it's not going to go back to that way, but I would support it if it did. And here's why. They knew at the time that those who were in elected office, those who were public servants, because remember, they saw themselves as citizen legislators, were doing the important work and very invested in the process, very mindful of the laws that they were passing and serving the American interest. And so it made sense to have those most in the know making the decision for each state's 2 senators being elected to Congress. And nowadays, we have voters who will show up on election day and not even know what they're voting for, much less who and what those people believe. And so, I see the drawbacks of a direct vote where people aren't doing their homework and they're not the informed voters that we all should be, because our vote is a sacred duty that we have as American citizens. And so we need to take that seriously and put in the time to make sure we're casting our ballots for the person that aligns with our values and with what we want to see in our elected representatives.
You got time for about 2 more questions?
Yeah, sure. I'm a night owl, but I'm also not sleeping much, so hit me.
Yeah. Okay. Vote by mail. What's your opinion on mail?
Oh, terrible idea. And here in Virginia, unfortunately, with the General Assembly session this spring, they've now waived the signature requirements moving forward on that, making it easier as well for fraud and abuse. And, I think it also becomes a question of system of scale, right? Because obviously there are people who are working and our military who can already participate in elections with integrity, with mail-in ballots, and that's fine. But when we're talking about opening up that can of worms to everybody, then I really question the system of scale and the ability to manage those. Mailboxes can be tampered with, people can get multiple ballots, people can show up in person, and someone's already taken your mail and turned in an absentee ballot. It's just too easy to rob you of your vote. And election integrity is really, really critical.
What Glock do you own?
I own a 43X. I like the heavier weightiness of it. But I also shoot routinely with my sister, who's got a SIG 365. So I like that too. But it's got less recoil, but I felt like it was going to fly away in my hand, so I went with the Glock.
I love my HKs. I hate 6. I don't like 6.
That's the fun part of conversations with gun owners, is everybody has their preferences and everybody has kind of their personality with what they are comfortable with. And, that's my recommendation. I've had a lot of people, especially with the civil unrest here in our state right now, that are uneasy and want to be able to defend themselves, when crap hits the fan. I'll be polite there. And so they've asked, well, what gun should I get? I'm like, the one that works for you, the one that you feel comfortable with, the one that you practice with and get highly skilled at using and managing. So, for me, I'm a Glock gal and have said the only gun control I need is stance and trigger discipline, right? So that'll work for me. Everything else, fight against.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to pick up your campaign website and let people know how they can find you and get in contact with you and volunteer or whatnot. But just through the the website, or do you want them to go to your Facebook page, or how do you
So
want them to
the website is there and certainly has links to all of our social media platforms, but I will confess that our Facebook tends to be the most active presence for our campaign. But much to the detriment and outcry of my 8th grade students who want to follow everything because they're rooting for me as well. They want me more on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, I forgot to take a picture of that event. Sorry. Because I've been doing the work, less worried about the photo ops. So less on Instagram, but we do have a presence on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. So Facebook tends to be the more transparent, everyday accountability piece of running as a first-time candidate. And then Twitter tends to be more of the news cycle and where we align with the president and moving the America First agenda forward.
All right, hold on for a second there. I'll be right back with you. I just want to do my little sign off here, then I'll be right back with you. So give me 1 second. All right, that was Alissa Baldwin running for the Republican nomination in the primary against Daniel Gade and Thomas Speciale, who were also on the show. You can go back and check out those. Just wanted to remind you guys, you can become part of my Patreon army now. And actually I have the right Patreon link in the chat. So, yeah. My producer, Matt, was killing me on that because I put the wrong Patreon in there. So it's patreon.com/John Crump. All the money goes to my niece who is suffering from brain cancer. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook at The Real John Crump. Head over to Black Swan Tactical, buy some cool stuff. Use code Liberty for 10% off at Black Swan Tactical. Cool t-shirts and all really cool stuff. And if you want to join Gun Owners of America, you can do that too at gunowners.org/black-swan-media. That's my company. Black Swan Media Group is my company. So black-swan-media for 25% off. Hit that thumbs up, like, comment, and subscribe. And join the conversation over at YouTube, because that's what I'm trying to push everyone to. Come on, people. I got 11,000 watching on Facebook and like 8 on YouTube. I don't get it. But come to YouTube. That's where the discussions are. And it's youtube.com/John Crump 2. And that is it for tonight. That is it for this week. Actually, I'm taking a couple days off. But I'll be back next week with some awesome guests, some surprise guests. And by that time, there's some stuff going on that you will be. Brian Wren's out there. Hold on, let me bring back Alissa back into the stream. Alissa,
Hi.
do you know who Brian Wren is?
Not by name. Should I know?
Wren versus the District of Columbia. He is the reason why anyone can get a concealed carry permit now.
Okay. Historic name. Nice.
Yeah, Brian Wren. He's one of the major cases in 2A. I had a couple of days ago. I had Rhonda Ezell on from Ezell versus the City of Chicago, and
Excellent.
And another big one from Wren versus the District of Columbia. But yeah, just want to give a little shout out to him. So I'll be right back.
Hi, Brian. No problem. Thanks for having me on, John.
All right, thanks. All right, Brian, you can also join my Patreon crew for $1 a month. And remember, the next donation to the GoFundMe, the Patreon, next for Patreon, or at paypal.me/JohnCC, will get a free rental of Sniper Assassin's End. Just came out yesterday, courtesy of Sony Pictures. They've taken a great care of me, so I take care of them. It's awesome people. All right, that is it. I'm going to play us out, and then I will see you guys later. So here comes the video right about now.